Sharing my story has not been easy, but I know there is someone out there who needs to hear this.
The heat was relentless from the early morning. It was one of those days in Silver Springs, a small town in New Mexico, where the sun shows no mercy and the dust seeps into your very bones. Mary Dolores Ramirez, her hands cracked from scrubbing, and her gaze distant, held a $5 bill as delicately as someone holds on to their last breath. That was all she had. No coins, no credit at the store, nothing, just that crumpled piece of paper, and the hunger in her 3 children's eyes. In the kitchen, Mikey was coughing, that dry, deep cough that no longer sounded like a cold, but like a silent punishment. Emily played with an old rag, pretending it was a doll. Louis stared blankly at the ceiling. None of them asked if there would be food, because they already knew the answer. Mary felt her heart shatter every time she saw their faces. But she didn't cry, not in front of them. "I'm going to sell some bread," she said with firm voice, though she was trembling inside. She grabbed her wicker basket, placed the last few cornbreads she'd made with what little she had left, and stepped out into the scorching sun. She walked past the same houses, heard the same "not today, thanks," and saw the same averted eyes. No one bought. No one even asked the price. She returned home as the sun was setting. The silence inside was heavier than at noon. Mikey was asleep with a fever. Louis stared out the window, and Emily hummed a made-up song to herself. Mary placed the empty basket on the table and went to her sacred corner, where an old image of Our Lady of Fatima stood. She lit a candle. At first, she didn't say a word. She simply knelt and began to cry. Not just tears, but her whole body sobbed, as if each drop of sorrow was purging the weight of a decade. "Mother," she whispered through sobs, "if you're watching me, if you've ever listened to someone like me, please, I beg you, not for me, for them. Send me a sign, just a sliver of hope. Anything, anything at all." The curtain swayed, the candle flickered. Silence returned. Mary remained there, her forehead pressed to the floor, the cold tiles soothing her fevered skin. Hours passed. Night fell. The children slept, but Mary stayed still, sitting silently in front of the Virgin. The candle was nearly burned out when suddenly knock knock. To soft knocks on the door. So faint they could have been part of a dream. Mary slowly stood, her heart pounded, though she didn't know why. She walked to the door, hesitated, peeked through the window. No one. She opened it. On the doorstep lay a small shadow, a white envelope. No voice, no footsteps, no figure disappearing into the night. Just the envelope. And the wind. Mary looked around. Nothing, no one. She picked up the envelope with trembling hands. It had no name, no markings, just a faint wax stain in one corner, as if it had been blessed. She stepped inside, shut the door, and sat by the altar. The envelope felt heavy, as if it carried the weight of the world. She didn't dare open it, not yet. She placed it before the Virgin, as if waiting for a divine confirmation. At that exact moment, the candle went out. Miracle, trap, a test. Mary didn't know, but something had just changed forever. Dawn came slowly and thick. Silver Springs was still asleep when Mary opened her eyes. The envelope was still there, untouched, on the little altar. The candle had melted into a frozen tear of wax. Mikey breathed heavily under his worn blanket. Louis snored softly. Emily whispered in her sleep to her rag doll. Mary got up quietly. She washed her face in a blue plastic tub filled with leftover water. Her hands were swollen, her chest tight. She walked over to the altar, picked up the envelope. It felt heavier than before. She opened it slowly, as if it might break something sacred. Inside were 2 things: a thick stack of bills, more than she had seen in years, a handwritten note, on faded yellow paper. The handwriting was clear, steady, no flourishes. It read, "Mary, God listens when no one else can. Don't ask where this came from. Just accept the relief. You deserve it." No signature, no name, just those few lines. And the echo of the prayer she had whispered the night before. Mary felt the floor shift beneath her. She didn't know whether to cry, scream, or run. Her first instinct was to give the money back, but to whom? Just then, Mikey woke up, his lips cracked and dry. "Is there breakfast, Mom?" Mary hugged him so tightly he whimpered. She ran out the door with the money, bought bread, milk, rice, eggs, and cough syrup. At the pharmacy, the clerk raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay, Mrs. Ramirez?" She only smiled, eyes brimming with tears. She returned home with bags that looked like miracles. Louis froze in place. Emily clapped like it was Christmas. They ate together like they hadn't in months. There was no silence that afternoon, only laughter, the sound of spoons, and a tune Mary hummed without realizing. But as night fell, the doubts returned. Who had left it? How did they know her name? What if it wasn't a gift, but a trap? Louis was the first to break the spell. What if it wasn't the Virgin? Mom. Mary looked at him, hurt, but she didn't reply. She stored the remaining money beneath the Virgin's image, in a metal box with a lock. Days passed. Mary tried to resume her life, but the envelope, it lingered in her mind. At the market, she spotted Mrs. Clare, seated in her wheelchair under the shade of a tree. The woman looked at her for a second, then lowered her gaze. Mary felt a jolt in her chest. Mrs. Clare was a woman she hadn't seen in years. She had been Mary's employer when she was young, and had fired her without explanation after a painful conflict Mary preferred not to remember. That night, Mary dreamed of her younger self. She saw Claire's pristine kitchen, heard boleros playing on the radio, felt the words that were never spoken. She dreamed of her husband, Anthony, laughing like he did before everything fell apart. When she awoke, she went to the altar, lit another candle, placed her hands on the metal box. She wasn't ready to open more doors, but she knew someone, was watching. The next morning brought thick, heavy clouds. Silver Springs woke up shrouded in a pale gray sky, promising rain but offering no relief. Mary opened her eyes with a knot in her stomach. She had dreamt of Anthony again. In the dream, he stood on the other side of a window and said, "Sometimes, silence hurts more than hunger." She sat on the edge of her bed and watched her sleeping children. Their faces no longer carried the same desperation. There was a bit of peace in them. But inside her, the storm was just beginning. She couldn't stop thinking about Mrs. Clare. Had she been the one who left the envelope? Why now? Why after all these years of silence? She opened an old box from the closet, filled with papers, photos, and scraps. Among them, she found a faded photograph, herself at 20, wearing a white apron, smiling shyly beside a younger Claire before everything went wrong. The memory burned. She remembered afternoons in that big house's kitchen, baking pound cakes and listening to music. And she remembered the shame, being accused of taking money that wasn't hers. A lie, a setup. Claire never heard her side. She just let her go without a word. That night, Mary came home with empty hands and a broken spirit. Anthony decided to leave town after that. Said he couldn't stand to see his wife humiliated. 3 months later, he died in an accident on his way north. Mary slammed the box shut. Shut her eyes tight, fighting the tears, and now she wants to fix it with an envelope. She muttered. Mikey appeared in the doorway. Mom. The cough came back. Reality struck again. They went to the clinic. Waited for hours. The medication was more expensive this time. Mary paid with part of the money from the envelope. The guilt burned like the sun on her back. That afternoon, as she prepared tortillas, Louis stormed in with eyes blazing. At school, they said I'm poor. That you beg for food. Who said that? Mary shouted, dropping the spoon. Everyone. And they're right. I don't want your food. I don't want your prayers. I want to leave this place. Mary froze. It was like someone had ripped her soul from her chest. Louis ran out. Mary collapsed to her knees. What now, Blessed Mother? Are you going to take him too? A gust of wind blew out the candle on the altar. That night, they didn't eat together. Emily fell asleep mid-prayer. Mikey drew a picture of the Virgin with a chewed-up pencil. Mary stared at the metal box of money and felt it gnawing at her insides. At midnight, she rose, wrapped herself in her shawl, and walked to Mrs. Clare's house. The house looked the same. Large, gray, lifeless. She rang the bell. Silence. She was about to leave when the door creaked open. Claire stood in the dim light, wearing a robe, her hair pulled back. I knew you'd come, she said. Mary swallowed hard. I need to know, was it you? Claire nodded. She said nothing more. She simply stepped aside and let her in. The inside of Claire's house smelled of dust and faded flowers. The curtains were drawn, and the dim light made everything feel frozen in time. Mary walked slowly, each step stirring years of silence, shame, and open wounds. Claire led her to the kitchen. Everything was intact, as if Mary had never left. Even the glass jar with the worn label was still in its place. Sit, Mary, Claire said with a dry but steady voice. I didn't bring you here to judge you. Or for you to judge me. Mary didn't sit. Why now? She asked in a whisper. Why after all this time? Claire closed her eyes for a moment. Because I was wrong. Because I failed you. And because when a woman like you falls, the world should stop. But it didn't, and I didn't either? A wave of emotion rose in Mary's chest, rage, sorrow, confusion. You fired me without listening. You left me with nothing. Because of you, Anthony left. Because of you, my family broke. Claire bowed her head. She placed her hand over her chest, where a rosary hung. I know, and no envelope can undo that. But I want to try. I want to give you something more. Mary remained still. Claire slowly stood and retrieved a new envelope, thicker than the first. She placed it on the table. There's more money here, but not just that. There's a proposal. I want you to work here again. I want to leave you this house, this kitchen, this bakery. Mary stepped back, as if someone had offered her poison. What are you saying? I want this house to have life again. I want you to fill it with bread and children. I don't want it to die with me. The silence was thick. But there's one condition, Claire added. I want you to pray with me. Every night. Let's carry this guilt together. Mary didn't know what to say, her eyes burned. Her throat was tight. I didn't come here for charity, she finally said. I came for truth. Claire nodded. And that's what I'm giving you. Mary left the house without the envelope. Without a goodbye. She walked quickly through the empty streets, her chest aching. When she returned home, she found Louis asleep on the floor, shoes still on. Mikey was coughing badly. Emily murmured, "Don't cry, Blessed Mother." She went to the altar, lit the candle. But this time, she didn't pray. She simply stared at the image. What if it's not you sending the miracles? She asked in a cracked voice. What if this is just another test? Suddenly, overcome with rage and pain, Mary pushed the altar. The image fell. The candle went out. The metal box burst open, and the bills flew through the air like dirty butterflies. Louis woke from the noise. What did you do? He asked, frightened. I'm tired, son. Tired of praying with an empty stomach. Louis looked at her, unsure of what to say. He went to his room, closed the door. Mary was left alone, surrounded by scattered bills, bits of candle, and a broken image of the Virgin. For 2 days, Mary didn't light a single candle. The image of the Virgin lay on the floor, the frame cracked. The altar had become an open wound in the middle of their living room. The silence between the four of them was heavy. Mikey grew worse each night. Louis barely spoke to his mother. Emily just watched, her wide eyes full of fear. On the morning of the 3rd day, Mary made a watery coffee and 2 dry tortillas. That was all she could manage. Mikey refused to eat. He coughed so hard he vomited. Louis left without saying a word. When Mary went looking for Emily, she found her kneeling in front of the broken altar, holding the fallen image in her little hands. Mommy, whispered the girl, does the Virgin not love us anymore? Mary knelt down slowly. Her eyes were burning. I don't know, sweetheart, I don't know. Last night I talked to her. I told her to forgive you. I told her you were screaming inside, but you didn't want to be mean. Something inside, Mary shattered. Emily gently placed the image back in its place, even with the broken frame. She told me she still listens. She's just waiting for you. It was at that moment Mary understood what she had done. She hadn't just knocked down the altar, she had broken herself completely. Trying to carry everything alone, she had shut herself off even from her own children. The miracle wasn't the envelope. The miracle was being alive. Despite it all, that afternoon, Mary put on her best shawl. She left Mikey with the neighbor and took Emily by the hand to Mrs. Clare's house. She arrived in silence. The old woman was in her usual place, sitting in the shade of the porch. I've come to accept your offer, Mary said directly, but not as charity, as justice. Claire didn't smile. She simply nodded. That's how it should be. They went inside. Claire handed Mary a new envelope. Inside was money, yes, but also legal papers. A formal deed of donation for the house and the old family bakery. Mary was stunned. You want to leave me this? I want you to have what should have been yours a long time ago. This isn't a gift. It's a reparation, and a legacy. Mary began to cry. Not from pain, but from relief, from wonder. And what do you want in return? Claire gripped her hand with surprising strength. That you live, that you forgive, that you pray for me when I'm gone. On the way home, Mary felt the sunlight on her face like a different kind of warmth. She stopped at the market and bought flour, eggs, milk. That night, she made cornbread with her own hands, and when she served it to her children, no one cried, no one asked questions. They just ate. Together Louis, still quiet, got up from the table and walked to the rebuilt altar. He lit a candle. "Thanks for the second chance," he whispered, too low for his mother to hear, and in the kitchen, Mary murmured a new prayer, one born from exhaustion and gratitude. Weeks passed. The whole town began to notice something different about Mary Dolores. She no longer walked hunched over, or with her eyes to the ground. Her steps were steady. Her hands, though still worn by labor, moved with the rhythm of rebirth. With Claire's help, Mary began to restore the old bakery attached to the house. They painted walls, repaired the ancient oven, dusted off molds that hadn't been used in decades. Claire watched from her chair, guiding with wisdom and silence. Louis stopped skipping school. He helped design the new sign, Hope Bakery. Mikey drew a smiling loaf of bread with a halo. Emily glued paper flowers in every corner. But Claire's body was no longer the same. Her hands trembled. Her voice faded. In her eyes, there was a quiet urgency. One afternoon, after the oven had been lit for the first time, Claire called Mary into her room. "I want this to be yours officially," she said, handing over a folder with notarized documents. "And your son?" Mary asked, remembering Claire's son who lived in the U.S. and hadn't returned in years. "He forgot me long ago. You're the one who stayed, who came back, who had the courage to forgive." Mary wanted to respond, but couldn't. Claire squeezed her hand with the last of her strength. "Don't stop praying, even if no one hears. God does. In His way, in His time." In the following days, Claire stopped leaving her room. Mary cared for her in silence, no tears, no blame. She made her tea, read her psalms, lit a candle at the foot of the bed. One night, as it rained for the first time in months, Mary felt the silence in the house thicken. She walked into Claire's room and knew, without even touching her, that she was gone. Emily appeared behind her. "Did the Virgin come for her?" she asked. Mary nodded, her tears calm and still. "Yes, sweetheart, and she baked her fresh bread in heaven." The next day, the town came to the funeral. No one knew much about Claire. Some thought she was a wholly eccentric, others, a mysterious widow, but when they saw Mary at the head of the casket, her children serving fresh bread and coffee to the mourners, everyone understood something they couldn't quite name. Mary received the official inheritance papers a week later, but that wasn't what moved her most. The real moment came when she found, resting atop Claire's neatly made bed, an old leather-bound notebook. On the first page, in that same unmistakable handwriting, it read, "Recipes and miracles. For Mary, because bread can heal. But you healed far more." It had been 20 days since Mrs. Claire passed. The bakery was nearly ready. The hand sign by Louis swayed in the dry wind, and the first customers had already begun arriving. Drawn by the smell of fresh bread, Mary woke before sunrise every day. She kneaded dough with her bare hands, whispered quiet prayers, and took the time to teach each of her children the little secrets of baking. "This is bread that feeds the soul," she told Mikey, who loved to braid the dough into shapes. "And what if someone has no soul?" he joked, with a grin. "Then we give them more bread," Mary replied, smiling. The image of Our Lady of Fatima, now in a new wooden frame, glowed above the oven. Emily decorated it with fresh flowers each morning. Louis had taken to writing small notes and leaving them at the altar. Thank you for not letting her fall. One morning, as Mary was organizing the ingredients for the day, someone knocked at the door. It was the town notary. "Mrs. Mary Dolores Ramirez," he said, holding a sealed envelope. "This is for you." Mrs. Claire left instructions for it to be delivered precisely today. Mary took the envelope, her chest tightening. She waited until she was alone to open it. Inside, there was a handwritten letter in the same firm, steady handwriting she had first seen in that mysterious envelope left on her doorstep. "Mary, if you're reading this, then I'm no longer here. I don't expect you to have forgiven me, but I know you took care of me, and that means more than forgiveness ever could. The bakery is yours. This house is yours. But the most important thing I leave you is this notebook that there are no miracles in it, only recipes. Recipes. I learned by watching your hands move. Sometimes, God doesn't come down from the sky. Sometimes, God has your hands, your tears, and your warm bread. Don't stop making them. There are many hungry souls out there." "Claire," Mary pressed the letter to her chest. She cried. But this time, not from pain, from gratitude, from freedom. The following week, Hope Bakery officially opened its doors. The whole town came, some out of curiosity, others out of longing for Claire, and others, simply drawn by the scent of bread on the breeze. Mary served each person with a renewed smile. She wore a white apron like in the old days, but now she was in charge. Mikey drew little hearts on the paper bags. Louis managed the register with a school notebook. Emily handed out paper flowers with every loaf dot at the end of the day. Mary knelt before the altar of the Virgin. "Thank you for letting me fall," she whispered. "And thank you for not letting me stay down." She placed the third envelope beside the image, next to the candle, and there, between flower, prayers, and silence, her real miracle began. If this story touched something inside you, if it reminded you of the silent strength of your mother, your grandmother, or even the woman you strive to be, supporting it by clicking on the thank you or hype button. The one with the lightning bolt is a small but profound gesture. It's like lighting a candle alongside mine and keeping that flame burning for those who still live in darkness. And before you go, tell me, what stayed with you after this story? Leave a comment here about what this narrative taught you, reminded you of, or even healed you. And if you have a similar story, your own or your family's, share it. Each comment here can be a sign that someone is silently asking for help. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more of these stories that touch your heart. And if you can, send this video to someone you feel needs to hear it today. This chain starts with us,